Good morning. Good morning, Michael. Sorry, I was turning to the right chapter in my book. I do have my study Bible with me today. Jonathan stopped by by Fran's house last night and picked it up for me while he was getting some other things. It's good to have you all back today. I'm a little more with it today, although Caleb, my oldest, finished off the coffee, so we're settling for Coke. But so good morning to Coffee House as well. It's good to see you both here. And things are getting, I guess we're getting into a bit of a routine, kind of, sort of. It's difficult with Jonathan not being here, but believe he managed to get a video up last night. I know he was having some technical difficulties, and the internet in Portland isn't the best, so he was having trouble getting things to download. And but I fell asleep before he came to bed, so I can't say whether he actually got that video uploaded or not. But the tractor engine show is going along. It's moving along, although it hasn't officially started. There are lots of tractors there already, and he was helping Lee get his booth set up. I know he took his Kubota today, so he'll be adding that to our slew of tractors that's up there. And a little disappointed I can't be there because this is something I've always done. But it's a sacrifice we make. One of us can be there, and if only one of us can be there, I'm glad that Jonathan is able to get away and enjoy himself. So hopefully today goes a little better for him. I know he was hot and pretty miserable when he got home. So we're praying that the internet does a little bit more for him. And Michael, you'll be watching that after this. And yes, Jonathan, I have almost identical Kubotas. Yes, Kubotas, I don't get into the technical things, but tractors are in my blood. And except for the green ones. I know some of you may like those green things, but I just can't bring myself. We're definitely international people, and but Kubotas are the work tractor that my family absolutely loves. My dad has one, his brother, my uncle has one, and they both use those for everything. And now that I say that, I'm fairly certain that they both have more than one. But they're great little tractors. Yes, I have taste, Michael. What did my dad always say? Green in the barn, red in the bank, red in the barn, green in the bank. I can't say that that's 100% true, but that's what he liked to say. And then he went out and bought a green combine, but we're not going to talk about that today. So today we are moving into our New Testament verse. If you're new to us, we follow the Revised Common Lectionary, which has it's studied by millions of Christians around the world. It is a great study tool. I know Jonathan talks about it a lot, but this is life-changing. If you study this, if you follow this study, it can truly change your life. You get deep into the Word, and you get just a little bit that's small enough that you can digest it each day, but they go along with each other so that you can follow a theme, and you're just able to really get into the Word and get it into your heart. And I know when I started this, I was like, I wasn't too certain, and I hadn't really studied the Bible much, and it absolutely changed my life. I developed a deeper relationship with Jesus, and it's just been fantastic since then. So, today we are looking at Hebrews. We're in chapter 12, verses 18 through 29. I have been reading, my study Bible is New Revised Standard, and it's not one that I typically read, and I've also seen that they have a very strict copyright on that, and they get a little finicky if you share too much of it online. So we're just not gonna test the waters there, and we'll just continue with the New International Version. I know Jonathan always does, I can't even think of the name of the translation he uses, but he always uses the same one. And I don't. There's nothing wrong with that one. I like it. I really like the NIV. It speaks to how I speak a little better. Helps me understand the words a little better. And it's just my go-to. Everyone has their go-to, and I'm not one that thinks that there's one better than another. So you're not going to find argument from me. So Hebrews 12:18. I need new glasses, so Coffee House, I was told the King James Version is the only one without copyright. That's possibly true. I mean, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I just know that the most of them, they're not real strict about it. I mean, as long as you give credit where credit's due, they're like whatever. But I do know that for some reason they track the NRSV, and I don't know. I think, sharing the Bible should be a great thing. Doesn't matter who's doing it or why, but as long as you give credit where it's due. But we're just not going to risk it. Michael, even more taste NIV guy here too. But yeah, all are good. One thing I like to do, which we don't really have time on here, but when I get into the study, I like to compare 4 different versions. And it's not always the same that I go for, but King James is usually one of them. But when you read the same section in 4 different versions, you get a better idea of what stands out the most. And I don't know, it helps, for me, it just helps me understand it a little better. And that's just something that I've done quite a bit. And that's usually when Jonathan and I, we had our study, that's why we always read a different version. Besides, our go-tos are different. All right, so I also need new glasses, so I gotta make this a little bigger. And I can't, so I'll have to bring it closer. This one in the NIV has a title, The Mountain of Fear and the Mountain of Joy. Starting in verse 18, you have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. So to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we, if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven? At that time his voice shook the earth, But now he has promised, once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. The words once more indicating the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire. Okay, Coffee House. Someone I watched on YouTube was sharing their study and she almost took it down because people said she couldn't. Someone else came on and said no, she could share King James Version, but it must be noted. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to... I mean, we always say what version we're using, and I just know that for some reason, whoever holds the copyright to the NRSV is always looking, and if you share too much of it, they will make you take it down. That's the only version I know of, but King James Version, yeah, if you want to, that's one that no one's going after. That, but in black. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean there, Michael. Okay, so therefore, okay. So I actually have my study Bible with me today. Hebrews 12. I made it to Hebrews, I just didn't find the right chapter. Let's go in 11. Bear with me. So how are you all doing today? Michael, have you had a good day? I know this is the end of your day. And Coffee House, how was your studies this morning? All right. So... ba-da-da. So we're going to go back just a little bit more. This is where I like to study a little bit before doing this. I know Jonathan does the off-the-cuff stuff, and I'm trying to stick with it, but... Michael, thank you. Work was fine. Still have a broken blower for our septic tank. Working on it, but busy days, which are good days. Idle hands and all that. Ugh, septic issues are like the worst. Yeah, I know, right now I could deal with a little bit of idle time, but yes, idle hands and all that. Okay, Coffee House. Far as I know, she's still monetizing all her videos. It's a country thing, United Kingdom Crown copyright. Other countries like US, it's considered public domain. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I'm glad that she's still going, and because we need all the people sharing as much as possible. Okay, so I am struggling here. These words are small, and like I said, I need new glasses. I I checked Jonathan because he has readers that he uses, and I checked to see if they were a little stronger so I could see a little better, because I have bifocals. I'm blind as a bat, I like to say. But unfortunately his were not as strong as mine, so they were no help at all. So, Michael, you did pre-read discussing Mount Sinai versus Mount Zion. Okay. Good. So, yeah, and a good way to kind of sum those up is Mount Sinai was the mountain of fear, where, everyone was terrified. Bad things were happening, which they weren't really bad things. They were actually good things, but it was the unknown, and we all fear the unknown. And Old Covenant versus New, yes. And then she seems like a sweet lady, and some of the people were really mean, which I just don't. You know what, coffee house, that is the across the board thing now. So people can be so mean, and it's so hard to keep going when you're just trying to do a good thing and people just beat you down for no reason. I've been there, and it's hard to sometimes it's hard to block those voices. And Jonathan said that I was washed out yesterday, so see if that helps. Okay, I already read that. So, let's go back to Hebrews. Jonathan goes verse by verse, and I think this is going to help me a little bit. So, the mountain of fear and the mountain of joy. You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them. And this is something that I think about a lot, because we hear a lot about the Bible thumpers and, beating people over the head with a Bible. And that's kind of where I was growing up. And I can tell you it doesn't work. I was terrified of going to hell, but I was also terrified of the God in the Bible. So I was kind of like between a rock and a hard place. So I'm like, okay, this God is supposed to be good, but he doesn't sound good. He sounds really scary. And coffee house, I target my studies based on what's going on here, and there's a lot right now, so I'll be back in press. Yeah, I totally understand that. But I remember the sermons with the hellfire and brimstone, and basically trying to scare people into heaven. And that might work for just a moment, but the relationship isn't there. And I've found that it's much better to love people into heaven, because with the fear, you're terrified, and you're not doing it because it's something you want to do. You're doing it because you feel it's the only choice. And that's why God gave us free will. He wants us to freely choose him. And if we're terrified, that's not really freely choosing him. So Michael, young me, used to try to tell street preachers preaching hell to young folks they were doing more harm than good. Really does. Young folks heading out on a Friday night. Yeah, if you're telling these people that are headed out to party or whatever how terrible they are, is that really going to get them to turn around and say, oh my goodness, you were so right, I'm going to listen to you because obviously you know so much more than I do? No, they're going to say, hey, did you hear that crazy guy talking on the street? And they're not even going to listen to what you're saying. But if you take a moment and share the love of Jesus, which is the mountain of joy. Sorry, I got a notification. But it goes so much further. And I know that when I finally found a church that loved me for me, I learned so much more. The sermons hit different, and I could actually understand them. I wasn't terrified anymore, and I got to know the God of love. And I think when we focus on the fear, we miss out on so much. And, there's a healthy fear, but I like to equate it with, like my dad. I am a daddy's girl. So I know that some people don't have the great father relationship that I do, but it's easy for me to equate God the Father with a loving father because I had one. So I know how much my relationship with my dad is to me. And for me, I was rarely disciplined because I didn't want to disappoint my dad. And he likes to joke. He spanked me one time and he said he would never do it again because I cried for 3 hours. For me, disappointing my dad was worse than any other punishment I could ever possibly get, because I was daddy's girl and I'm not supposed to do any wrong, and anything that caused my dad to even frown at me was enough that I was broken, I was destroyed. And that's what I think of with fear with God. It's not that we're afraid he's going to rain fire down on us. It's we don't want to disappoint him because we love him and we know that he loves us and he only wants what's best for us. And we want to keep from those consequences because we just don't want to disappoint him in the first place. We want to do the loving thing and we want to do what's best, and so that we can continue feeling that love with him. Okay, we got some comments here. Michael, my other example, here there is a big week-long party most of our school leavers go to on the Gold Coast. The Red Frogs are young children, Christians who go and try to keep an eye on people and help. If they find folk having drunk too much, etc., comforting those who are upset about stuff, respect them a lot more. Oh yeah, that's really nice. That's definitely a great thing, Michael. And so many things can happen at parties. If you have these good people looking out, you can maybe dissuade some of those things, the drugging of the drinks and whatnot. Coffee house. I was taken to a church once by someone I didn't know when I was 9. It was scary. They were wailing, flailing their arms, throwing themselves on the floor, and laying over what I thought was a coffin. Described it to my mother, and she just said, "Holy rollers," and walked away. That, as a 9-year-old, had to have been an absolutely terrifying experience. I cannot imagine. How did that affect your walk, Coffee House? I'm curious. And yeah, that's rough. I know mine was just a preacher standing there telling me how wrong I was. Michael, someone once told me hell is the absolute lack of God. That scares me more than a lake of fire. Absolutely, Michael. That's kind of where I was getting at. Like I said, with having my father, having such a good relationship with him, my dad's kind of my world. I mean, him, and he's right up there with Jonathan and the kids. I mean, when he had his heart surgery, I was devastated, absolutely devastated. I mean, it was a rough time because it's around when Jonathan had his back surgery and I had my emergency C-section, and then 2 weeks later my dad had open heart surgery. So I was already a bundle of nerves, a bundle of emotions with a new baby, and it was just a mess. And then I had to face my father's mortality, because after his surgery, he was on a ventilator. And we walked into the hallway, and I just collapsed into Jonathan's arms, and we just sat there, and he held me while I cried. And I had no idea why I was taking it so hard. And then finally he's like, "You're facing your dad's mortality. You're facing the fact that your father's not going to live forever." And that is what broke me. And so that goes right along with what you're saying, Michael. Hell without is the lack of God. And that's way worse than what my life without my father would be. I mean, I know he's just a mortal being, and one day he will leave this earth, and I'll be here without him. And that thought scares me a bit. And so that's why we spend a lot of time having our faith conversations. That's something we never had growing up. And I've been able to heal some brokenness in my dad with his church hurt. And I think that we've been able to make some good strides towards repairing his relationship with God. And obviously that's not something I can do. It's something between him and God. But at least he's open to it now, because he was in a pretty rough situation with church. And he's like, church is just fighting. I'm like, "No, Dad, your church was fighting. That's not how church is supposed to be. Church is supposed to be a family. You're supposed to love one another." And that was definitely not the experience I had. And obviously, Coffee House, that was not the situation that you had in that church either. But that's one thing that's different. I know we talk a lot about our church, but our church is different. And we knew it from the minute we stepped in. I mean, I was looking forward to, we hadn't had communion in months, probably even a year at the church we'd been at. And that was just something I was craving. And that week, they had communion at this church. And it was like an answer to prayer. And then after the service, the pastor came up to us, introduced himself, and said, "You know what? If this isn't the church for you, I will help you find the one that's for you." And that was huge to us. Because it wasn't about, "Hey, you need to come to my church and do this and make sure that you give your money here," and all that. He was truly concerned about our salvation, and he wanted us to be at a place where we were comfortable. And oddly enough, that just ended up being Southside. And because we were actually planning on visiting a few different churches, and it didn't happen. We visited Southside and we never left. And that was about 7 years ago. And we've truly found a family there. I think I'm on the worship team there too, and there's 2 guys on the worship team. I have 2 brothers, and I've never been able to build relationships with females as well, because I just understand how guys' minds work a little better, and I naturally build relationships with men easier than women. And I have my female relationships, and oddly enough, they're the same way. They get along better with men, so that's probably why we get along so well. But 2 of the guys, one of them actually grew up around the corner from me in the small little town of Collett. And him and the other guy are like my little brothers. And I truly look forward to seeing them, and the conversations we have. And their wives are like my sister-in-laws. I don't even know why this works, but it truly feels like they're my little brothers. And it's not just them. There's so many. I have relationships with literally everyone in that church, and I have never felt like I belonged somewhere as much as I do there. And I look forward to spending as much time with them as I can. It's never something that I dread. It's more of a, how can I spend more time with these people? Which is why I started the Fifth Sunday Fellowship. So let's see. Coffee house. Forgot the part where the person dropped me off, so I was alone. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. I kept the fear and confusion, but a few years later I went to a Catholic church with my grandparents a couple times, and it was different. But I wasn't allowed to talk about home stuff, so I just tucked it away and did not find church again until my 40s. Yeah, coffee house. That's, if you can't talk about it, it makes it so much harder. And you say 40s, there's something about that number 40 where things just get different. And Michael, still go Catholic or end up elsewhere? Coffee house? No. For me, I cannot feel my connection to God in a room full of people, but my husband goes to a non-denominational. Yeah, that's kind of where my dad is too. He struggles with going to the church building and being with around other people. And, that could be because of your experiences. You've had some particularly nasty experiences. I don't have a lot of experience with Catholicism. My niece was raised both Catholic and Nazarene so that she could choose when she got older. So we went to her special things. First Communion. That's the only one coming to mind. But I know we went a few times. And all I can say was I was confused. I had no idea what we were doing. And thankfully, there were some nuns that sat beside us for her first communion. And they're like, you stand up now. Sit down. You don't need to do this. And they just really guided us through it. And even though we had zero idea what was going on, it was nice to feel welcomed by someone that didn't have to welcome us. And I also went for a Good Friday service, and it was fantastic. And I'm not one to bash Catholicism. I think there's great things in it. I think there's a few things, the personal side is a little lacking for my personal beliefs, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong by any means. It's just that's not something I choose. And but they definitely get a lot of things right, and I think we could learn some things. Okay, coffee house. I get overwhelmed internally by other people's emotions. If I'm feeling theirs, my own get blocked out. It's weird. That really makes sense though. You empathize, and then you understand what they're feeling, and then it blocks out what you're feeling, and that could be very overwhelming. I understand that. Michael, it's quite ritualistic. I grew up in Anglican, pretty similar, just no Pope. Yeah. And coffee, the empath. But yeah, I'm definitely not here to say, one church is better than another, but it's definitely a personal decision. If you're not comfortable where you are, maybe it's not where you belong. Maybe you need to find the one that fits you. And but coffee house, I understand how difficult that could be. And okay, let's get back to the scripture. I've kind of gone off on some major tangent here. Okay, so we're in 20. Because they could not bear what was commanded, if even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, "I am trembling with fear." And I can only imagine, I mean, just for a place, to be so off limits that even an animal can't go there. One of God's creations. And I can understand, I mean, it had to be terrifying. But we go into 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator. Well, we'll go back. We'll pause there. This is, I mean, the hope that exudes from these verses. And it starts with but. But you have come to Mount Zion. You were here, but there's more. And this is something I like to say a lot. But God. You know, because you're on this path. This is what's going on. But God. God changes things. God makes you. God has more for you. God has big plans for you. And we don't have to settle for that fear. There's so much more waiting for us. And we see it here. The angels upon angels. And I know as humans we naturally think of humanoids with wings. But we know in the Bible that angels don't look like that. And personally, I'm looking forward to see what the angels look like. But joyful assembly. Coffee house, you're talking about assembly. Doesn't sound so joyful there. But this is the opposite. This is joy. An assembly filled with joy. Everywhere around you is joy. Your names are written in heaven. Going down coffee house. Yeah, that does sound right. I had trouble seeing the love in God the first time I read the Bible. It took me a long time to find the love of God in the Bible, because I couldn't get past the fearful God of the Old Testament, and I couldn't reconcile how this God that sounded terrifying was actually a loving God. And it definitely took me a long time to figure out, and I was in my late 20s before I ever understood any of, even a glimpse of a God that was anything other than terrifying. But aren't we so glad that there is so much more? The God of love. Once you find out how much love God has for us, it's amazing. Let's see. Michael. Well, here I find the notes talking Mount Zion being the city of God, humans now having access to God, and the joy of that. Yes, so much. And that's one thing that sometimes we just kind of skim over. We don't have to have an intercessor anymore. Yes, Jesus is our intercessor and he goes before us. But we can freely go. We can just, if we have an issue, we don't have to call up the pastor and say, "Hey, pastor, I'm struggling. Can you talk to God about this and see if he can do something about it?" No. You just, where you are, you just stop and say, "God, please help me." And, you know, God's so amazing that even when you can't come up with the words, he's there and he knows. He knows every one of us. And he doesn't hesitate to love on us. Okay, sorry, Michael. When I was young, being raised in the church, I used to wonder why new Christians focus on the gospel. I have learned why, and it's a great place to start. Old Testament was all about that and their priests. Yes. Michael, now that you say that, that was my turning point. I really struggled with finding the loving God, and it was focusing on the Gospels. It was Jonathan's grandfather. He's talked about him. He's an amazing man. He was my first glimpse of what a Christian should be and how they should act, because he was love. He loved everyone. He loved everything. And I asked him, where do I start in the Bible? I thought you were supposed to read it cover to cover because it's a book, right? That's what you do. You start at the beginning, you read all the way through to the end. And I'd get stuck. I'd get to Numbers, and I'd be like, there's a lot of numbers. I don't like numbers. Which is funny because that's what I do for a living. But I get stuck on math. And when you're sitting here reading all these numbers and the begats, and it's just overwhelming. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this? What does this have to do with me? But if you go to the gospel, and that's one thing he said, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Go read them all the way through without stopping. Get it done in 30 days. I was like, okay, that's different. That's the middle of the book. I don't know what to do about that because, you're supposed to start at the beginning. So I rationalized it in my rational mind. It's the beginning of the New Testament. That's a different book, right? So that's how I was able to do it, because this sounds absolutely ridiculous saying it out loud. But I am so order focused that I can't start in the middle of a book. When I was in class, if I had a teacher that didn't start in chapter 1, I still read chapter 1 because I'm like, no, we need to find out what happened here first. And so for Grandpa to say, you need to start here in the middle of the book, I'm like, oh, whoa. Okay, so obviously you know what you're talking about because you're a pastor and you love me and you make me feel loved. And all right, I'll try this. And like I said, I literally had to rationalize it that it was still the beginning of the book because it was the New Testament. And some books only have the New Testament. And so I started there, pretending like the Old Testament didn't exist, pretending I didn't know any of the things I already knew. And I started with this new story that started in the New Testament with Matthew. And I read through Matthew. It was a little slow getting through it because here I was learning this new thing, still trying to pretend that other book didn't exist. And then came Mark, and it was a little faster. And then I got to Luke, and I think this is where my love of Luke began, because Luke is where I found my groove. I ran through Luke, and it just flowed through my mind. I soaked it in, and before I knew it, I was in John. I read all of it, and he was like, you know what? I'm just going to go through Acts 2. He didn't tell me to do that one, but it's right here. So I read through Acts, and then I started back in Matthew. And I read it again, and I was like, this is amazing. This is the God of love that Grandpa's talking about. And it was life-changing for me. And it was after that I was able to fully give myself to God. I'd been saved, but I was still holding that little bit of hurt back because I didn't want to give it away. I thought I needed to hold on to the hurt because I deserved it. That's a story for a different time. But for the first time, I was able to grasp the love of God, and I could not get enough. And to be completely honest, that's where my journey began. I jumped in and couldn't get enough, and I still can't get enough, because God's love is amazing. And we should be shouting this from the mountaintops, because this feeling's amazing and we can't keep it to ourselves. It's just awesome. And I gotta say, what's even more amazing than feeling God's love for myself is when I see my kids experiencing God's love. Or when I see that person that I've been trying to get through to finally click and see and feel God's love for the first time. And I'm like, yes, now you get it. Now you understand. Welcome to the family. I've loved you this whole time, but now you can kind of finally feel that love. Okay, Michael, when I was young, being raised in the church, I used to wonder why. Oh, yeah, we already went there. I'm laughing with you, can relate. It's out of sequence. Yes, it's an issue. I realize I have issues, but should have handed you a Gideon's then. It's just the New Testament. Funny thing, Michael, I had them. I could not bring myself to read them because they didn't include the first book. I tried. Luke is always good when you need some comfort, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I think everyone has a gospel book that they relate to the most. And for me, it's 100% Luke. I am slowly understanding why, but for some reason, I just get Luke more. Coffee house. I lack focus and dislike tedious. I had my Bible over 49 years. I read the red words first because I wanted the words from the source first. Then decided I wanted further context and read it all. That's fantastic. And shout out to you for being able to do it. I could not get out of my head. Thankfully, you don't have my nonsense to deal with. But that's it. The red words, that's the source. That's exactly. And that worked for you. And that's fantastic. And I hope that not everyone, unfortunately, it sounds like Michael is totally understanding what I'm saying. I got hung up and I just couldn't get past it. And there was definitely God working through Grandpa to help me break that, because I'd still be in numbers. I mean, I struggled and struggled and struggled. And I think I finally made it to Galatians when Grandpa said, read this. I'm like, all right, fine. Because I couldn't do it. I do like the tedious things. But I would shut myself down. And I think that's where I was. Michael, Jonathan would tell us it's his writing style. He's probably bang on when I thought about it. Yeah, I really do like Luke's writing style. And that's probably it because, the Lucan style. I mentioned it yesterday, and because we were in Luke, and I've already told you how much I love Luke. But Luke was also, when we were studying in college, for some reason, I guess he wasn't the first, but we had to read the entire entire book, beginning to end, for each of the Gospels. And I gotta tell you, that is very different. If you have time to do something for that, like that, I highly recommend doing it. You just start with, like, Matthew. You read all of Matthew, like, in one sitting, if possible. Break it up as little as possible. And you get a whole new grasp of what they're doing, rather than just getting the little tidbits and splicing them together. And Luke he's very wordy, so it's a little longer, but but you could feel him through it. You could feel his emotions so much more. And I think that's why I connect with him and his writings, because I have a similar writing style, and I like to be able to feel the emotions when I read things. And it's just a different experience. And I have spent a lot of time on this, and I apologize. But but we can just go back. We're going to bring it into context here. Bring the scripture in. We have so much more than fear. God is the God of hope. And we don't need to focus on the fear anymore. We can focus on the hope and the good to come and heaven and all that's waiting for us. But we don't have to wait. This is something I went for in my last sermon. We don't have to wait till we get to heaven to enjoy God's blessings. He has those blessings for us right now, right here where we are. And all we have to do is accept them. And don't hold them in. Don't hold those blessings to ourselves. Give them away. And I can't say this enough. People are hurting right now in this world. Everywhere you go, you're going to find one person at least on your path that's hurting. And you don't know what they're going through. But if you can just share a little bit of love. And one thing I like to say is smile. It could be the simplest thing, like a smile to a stranger, could be life-changing to them. That small bit of hope that they've been searching for, and you gave them just enough to keep going. And maybe it's just enough to surrender to God. You never know who you're encountering and what they're going through in their life. And even if it's you, just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and God will support you all the way through it. And know that no matter what happens, you are loved. Tremendously loved, more than you can possibly imagine. And when you're hurting, it's so hard to believe that someone could possibly love you at all. But to know that God loves you more than anyone else. He loves you, and He made you just the way you are. And who you are is enough. You don't have to be anything that someone else thinks you should be. Because God made you, you. Specifically you. For a specific reason. And only you can be you. So, Michael, the reference to Moses back in 21, the notes say the fear was from leaving the presence of God to go back down the mountain. Absolutely. I can't even imagine how Moses left the presence of God to go back to his people. That shows the love he had for his people. That bit is like, yeah, having to leave God's presence. Yeah, absolutely. I just can't. Coffee house, that is true. You never know someone's story, but God loves us all. Absolutely. So our time is just about up. My cat's losing his mind down here on the floor. She has her little mouse and has just gone nuts. But we like to keep Grandma on a schedule, and she likes to have her breakfast at 9 o'clock. And we're getting close to that time. But tomorrow, looking ahead, we are in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 4 to 10. And I have no idea what that's about. But I'm really bad with memorizing scripture, so don't think that I'm going to be like, oh, yeah, I've got some scripture memorized, but yeah, that's something that I'm still working on. Hope Grandma is well. On with the day, Melinda. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Michael. But I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. And Michael, I hope you sleep well. But just go out and be the light. Be the light, God's light. Let God's light shine through you to everyone you encounter. Don't hide that light. Let it exude from you and love everyone that you encounter today and tomorrow and every day to come. And I know Jonathan's a stickler for being right on the nose, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, I'm so thankful that you all joined me today, and I look forward to joining you again tomorrow as we're slowly getting into the groove of doing this thing. I look forward to doing it, and I look forward to see what we're going to learn from Jeremiah tomorrow. And you have an absolute blessed day. See you tomorrow. That's it.